November 14th, 1942, 11:47 a.m. Stalingrad. Obergefreiter Hans Schmidt presses his face against frozen concrete. His breath comes in short, controlled bursts. White vapor in the -20-degree air. Each exhale is a potential death sentence. Somewhere in the rubble, 200 meters away, maybe closer, a Soviet sniper is hunting. Schmidt watches through a crack in the wall. The helmet rises slowly from behind a pile of shattered bricks. German Feldgrau, unmistakable. One of theirs. Maybe Müller from 3rd Company. Maybe someone from the supply convoy that never made it back yesterday. The helmet tilts slightly, as if the wearer is scanning the street. A single shot cracks across the frozen wasteland. The helmet jerks backward and drops. No scream, no movement. Just silence. Schmidt's hands shake, not from cold, from the mathematics of survival that every German soldier in Stalingrad has learned to calculate. That's the 4th man today. The sun isn't even at its highest point. But here's what makes Hans Schmidt's blood turn to ice water. The helmet rises again. Same position, same pile of bricks, same slow, deliberate movement. Schmidt's mind fractures. Dead men don't stand up. Dead men don't expose themselves twice. Unless... Another shot. The helmet drops again, and that's when Schmidt understands. Nobody was holding that helmet. Nobody died. The bullet hit empty steel and cloth, and somewhere in those ruins, a Soviet marksman just pinpointed exactly where Schmidt's comrades are hiding. In 4 months, this one tactic will kill more German morale than any bomb, any artillery barrage, any tank assault the Red Army can throw at them. Welcome to the invisible war. Welcome to psychological warfare at its most brutal. Welcome to the hunting grounds where Soviet snipers turn deception into a weapon deadlier than bullets themselves. Let me take you back. Back to when an entire German army walked into hell and found out that the devil wore a white winter smock and carried a Mosin Nagant rifle. The Battle of Stalingrad began on August 23, 1942, when the Luftwaffe turned the city into an inferno. 40,000 civilians died in the first week alone. The city that bore Stalin's name became the symbolic prize neither side could afford to lose. By November, the battle had devolved into something new, something the German military had never encountered. Urban warfare on a scale that made street fighting look like a chess match played with human pieces. The ruins created the perfect killing field. Every window was a potential firing position. Every pile of rubble concealed a Soviet soldier. Every shadow could hide death. The Germans called it Rattenkrieg, rat warfare. Fighting for individual rooms, individual floors, individual staircases. But the rats had teeth, and some of those rats had scopes. The Soviet Union had been training snipers since the 1920s. Marksmanship schools, formal doctrine. By 1942, they'd created something unprecedented in military history, a systematic sniper warfare program on an industrial scale. The numbers are staggering. During World War II, the Soviet Union trained 428,335 snipers. Let me repeat that. 428,335 dedicated marksmen. Not soldiers who could shoot well. Trained snipers with documented kills. And here's the part that made German commanders lose sleep. 284 of those snipers were women. Think about that. In 1942, most armies wouldn't let women near combat. The Soviets were graduating them from sniper school with the same standards as men, handing them rifles and sending them to hunt. By 1945, about 500 of these female snipers survived the war. The casualty rate tells you everything about how these women fought. They didn't stay in safe positions. They hunted in the same ruins as the men. Lyudmila Pavlichenko, 309 confirmed kills. Nina Lobkovskaya, 89 kills at age 18. Rosa Shanina, 59 kills, including 12 enemy snipers. The Germans called them Flintenweiber, gun women. They called them unnatural. They called them every name you can imagine. They died to them all the same. Back to Hans Schmidt, pinned in his position, watching that helmet rise and fall. He's part of the German 6th Army, the most powerful mechanized force ever assembled. 500,000 men, 1,300 tanks, over 10,000 artillery pieces. They conquered France in 6 weeks. They pushed the Soviets back 1,000 miles in 6 months. Now they can't cross a single street in daylight. The Germans became afraid to lift their heads in daylight hours. Not exaggeration, not propaganda. Documented fact from German after-action reports. Officers couldn't lead because leadership required visibility. Radio operators couldn't string antenna wire because that meant exposure. Supply convoys couldn't unload because unloading meant standing upright for more than 3 seconds. 3 seconds. That's how long Soviet snipers were taught to acquire and eliminate a target. The psychological impact went beyond fear. It created paralysis. German commanders had conquered half of Europe with blitzkrieg. Lightning war, speed, aggression, momentum. Now their troops refused to move. Not because they were cowards, because movement meant death, and death came from nowhere, from everywhere, from directions you couldn't predict or prevent. You couldn't artillery strike the threat away because the snipers moved after every kill. You couldn't send tanks because Stalingrad's rubble broke tank treads and tank sight lines. You couldn't call in air support because the fighting was too close, the lines too intermixed. You could only wait and pray and hope that when you had to move, the Soviet sniper was looking somewhere else. The average life expectancy of a Soviet soldier in Stalingrad was 24 hours. The average life expectancy of a German soldier who exposed himself in a sniper zone was approximately 8 seconds. Schmidt knows this. Everyone knows this. The veterans teach the replacements on day 1. Never silhouette yourself. Never move in patterns. Never, ever trust that a position is safe just because nobody's been shot there yet. But here's what Schmidt doesn't know. What none of the Germans know yet. The Soviets had a weapon deadlier than bullets. They had psychology. Because those helmets on sticks, those dummy soldiers, those decoys rising from the rubble, they weren't just trying to draw fire to waste German ammunition. They were mapping every German position, every firing angle, every reflex. And once the Soviets knew where you were, once they understood how you reacted, once they'd cataloged your patterns and your fears and your desperate attempts to survive, then came the real hunters. The snipers who'd studied under instructors like Vasily Zaitsev, the ones who could put a bullet through a German officer's scope from 400 meters away. The ones who worked in pairs, in teams, in coordinated networks that turned entire city blocks into killing zones where German soldiers couldn't scratch their nose without risking their lives. November 1942. The Germans still believed they could win Stalingrad. They still believed in their tactical superiority, their training, their equipment. They had no idea that a simple trick, a helmet on a stick, a dummy in a window, a decoy in the rubble, was about to break their entire offensive. In 4 months, the German 6th Army would surrender. 91,000 survivors out of 500,000. The rest died, frozen or scattered across the Volga steppes. And historians would credit the Soviet counteroffensive, the winter, the supply failures. But the soldiers, the ones who survived, they'd tell you about the snipers. They'd tell you about the invisible death. They'd tell you about the moment they realized that the Soviets weren't just shooting back. They were hunting. And in war, There's a world of difference between those two things. Schmidt survived that day in November. He'd survived 3 more weeks before a sniper bullet found him during a supply run. But before that happened, he'd witnessed something that would haunt every German soldier who fought in Stalingrad. He'd watched the Soviets turn deception into an art form, a science, a weapon more terrifying than any bullet. Because bullets kill soldiers. But fear kills armies. Next, we meet the man who perfected the trick. The hunter from the Ural Mountains who'd killed his first wolf at age 12 with a single shot. The man the Germans would fear more than Stalin himself. His name was Vasily Zaitsev, and he was just getting started. September 13th, 1942. The day Stalingrad died and was reborn as something else entirely. The Luftwaffe's 4th Air Corps unleashed 1,000 sorties in a single afternoon. Junkers U-87 Stukas screamed down through the smoke, sirens wailing. Heinkel He-111 bombers carpeted the city center with incendiaries. By nightfall, 90% of Stalingrad's residential areas were burning. The city that emerged from those flames wasn't a city anymore. It was a skeleton. A labyrinth of shattered concrete, twisted steel, and pulverized brick that stretched for 25 miles along the western bank of the Volga River. Factory districts transformed into fortresses. Apartment blocks became vertical battlefields. The Mamayev Kurgan, Hill 102, changed hands 14 times in a single week. The Germans called it the Stalingrad Cauldron. The Soviets called it the meat grinder. Both were right. But here's what nobody anticipated. Not the German High Command planning Operation Blue. Not Stalin ordering, not one step back. Not even the Soviet generals preparing for urban warfare. The ruins created the perfect hunting ground. Think about what a sniper needs. Concealment, multiple firing positions, clear sight lines mixed with obscured approach routes, elevation advantages, the ability to relocate quickly without detection. Stalingrad offered all of this in abundance. A factory wall with shell holes becomes 47 different firing positions. A collapsed apartment building creates a honeycomb of hides with overlapping fields of fire. The rubble absorbs sound, making muzzle reports harder to locate. Dust and smoke obscure muzzle flash. The chaotic skyline breaks up human silhouettes. For traditional infantry, Stalingrad was hell. For snipers, it was paradise. And into this paradise walked a 27-year-old Soviet soldier who'd been killing since he was 12 years old. His name was Vasily Grigorievich Zaitsev. Born March 23, 1915, in Yeleninskoye, a village in the Ural Mountains. His childhood wasn't remarkable except, for one thing, his grandfather Andrei was a hunter. Not a casual hunter, a subsistence hunter in one of the harshest environments on Earth. The Urals in winter, temperatures dropping to -40, wolves, bears, and lynx competing for the same scarce game you're trying to feed your family with. One shot has to count because ammunition is expensive and animals are fast, and if you wound something dangerous, it might kill you before you can reload. Andrei taught young Vasily the old way. Stalking, patience, reading animal behavior, understanding wind, distance, trajectory, making the first shot the only shot you need. Age 12, Vasily killed his first wolf, single shot, through the heart at 200 meters with his grandfather's ancient rifle. Andrei's only comment, "Good, now skin it before the pelt freezes." For the next 15 years, Zaitsev hunted deer, elk, wolves, whatever moved in the forests. He developed an almost supernatural ability to read terrain, to sense movement before seeing it, to calculate distance by instinct rather than measurement. Then Hitler invaded the Soviet Union. Zaitsev enlisted in the Soviet Navy, served in the Pacific Fleet. Accountant, of all things. He was processing paperwork in Vladivostok when the request came through. Experienced hunters needed for special duties in Stalingrad. September 1942, Zaitsev transfers to the 1047th Rifle Regiment, 284th Rifle Division, 62nd Army. He arrives in Stalingrad on September 22nd. By October 2nd, he's killed 40 Germans. 10 days, 4 kills per day. But it's not the quantity that gets attention. It's the quality. Officers, machine gun crews, artillery spotters. Every kill is a high-value target. Every death disrupts German operations. This isn't suppressive fire or lucky shots. This is surgical elimination of combat effectiveness. The Soviet command notices. They give Zaitsev an assistant, Nikolai Kulikov, and turn him loose. By December 1942, Zaitsev's confirmed kill count reached 225. But here's what makes Zaitsev special. What transforms him from effective sniper to legendary tactician? He doesn't just hunt, he teaches. Zaitsev developed what became known as the sixes tactic. It sounds simple. The execution is brilliant. 3 firing positions, 2-man teams, all covering the same kill zone from different angles. Here's how it works. Position 1, the bait team. They're visible, semi-exposed, drawing attention. They fire occasionally, just enough to keep German heads down and establish a threat. Position 2, the Overwatch team. They're watching Position 1, waiting for German counter-snipers to reveal themselves while hunting the bait team. Position 3, the cutoff team. They're positioned to intercept any Germans trying to flank Positions 1 or 2. All 3 teams communicate with hand signals. All 3 teams can shift roles depending on the German response. The whole network rotates positions every 2 to 3 hours, so Germans can't pattern the activity. It's not just a tactic, it's a system. A network that turns individual snipers into a coordinated killing machine. And it works so well that the Russian military still uses it. During the Chechen intervention, Russian forces deployed modified versions of Zaitsev's sixes against Chechen separatists in Grozny. Same principles, same coordination, same devastating effectiveness in urban terrain. An 80-year-old tactic, still relevant, still lethal. That's how good Zaitsev was at understanding the mathematics of death. The German High Command isn't stupid. They recognize the problem. Soviet snipers are bleeding their offensive, and regular troops can't counter them effectively. So they bring in their own specialists. SS Hauptscharführer Josef Sepp Allerberger arrives in Stalingrad in late 1942. He's already an ace. 150 confirmed kills on the Eastern Front. Cool, methodical, precise. He carries a Karabiner 98K with a Zeiss ZF-42 scope, arguably the finest sniper rifle system Germany produces. Allerberger is hunting Soviets the way Zaitsev hunts Germans. And he's terrifyingly good at it. Allerberger later reports shooting 18 Soviet soldiers in 1 hour during a single engagement. 1 hour, 18 kills. That's 1 target eliminated every 3.3 minutes, including target acquisition, ranging, firing, and relocation. His final tally, 257 confirmed kills. Other German counter-snipers arrive. Matthias Hetzenauer, 345 kills. Heinz Thorwald, possibly fictional, records unclear. Supposedly over 400 kills. Whether all these numbers are accurate or propaganda inflated, the intent is clear. Germany is fighting fire with fire. The cat-and-mouse game escalates. Soviet snipers start hunting German snipers who are hunting Soviet snipers. The Germans do the same. Duels within duels. Entire days spent motionless, waiting for the enemy sniper to make a single mistake. A glint off a scope lens, a silhouette held too long, a firing position used twice. 1 mistake, 1 death. The psychological pressure is crushing. You're not just fighting. You're waiting, watching, knowing that somewhere in those ruins, someone equally skilled is doing exactly the same thing. And whoever breaks concentration first dies. German soldiers start calling the Soviet snipers Schwarzer Tod, Black Death, not because of their uniforms. Because you never see them, you only see the results. Your squad mate slumps forward with a hole in his forehead. Your officer drops mid-sentence, blood spraying from his throat. Your best friend stands up to stretch after 4 hours in position, and his head explodes. No warning, no sound, just sudden, brutal death from nowhere. And here's the truly diabolical part. Zaitsev and his students don't just kill randomly. They kill strategically. They study German patrol patterns, rotation schedules, supply deliveries. They wait for moments of maximum psychological impact. They kill the radio man right before a scheduled check-in, forcing someone else to expose themselves to use, the radio. They kill the medic first during a firefight. So wounded Germans die slowly while their comrades listen. They kill officers during mealtimes, when the entire unit can see their leader's brains scattered across their rations. This isn't warfare. This is psychological torture at industrial scale. The German soldiers aren't just afraid of dying. They're afraid of how they'll die. Sudden, helpless, knowing that the last thing they'll never see is the muzzle flash that kills them. Zaitsev's students alone, the snipers he personally trained, account for over 6,000 German casualties. 6,000 kills from maybe 30 trained snipers. That's 200 kills per sniper in 4 months of fighting. The mathematics broke German morale faster than any bombardment. November 1942. The sniper war reaches a fever pitch. Both sides are deploying their best hunters. The Germans are losing troops at an unsustainable rate, but they're also killing Soviet snipers with increasing efficiency. It's a stalemate. A deadly, grinding stalemate where both sides bleed expertise they can't replace. And that's when Vasily Zaitsev has an idea. An idea so simple, so dirty, so psychologically devastating, that it will change the entire character of the Stalingrad battle. What if you didn't need to shoot the enemy sniper? What if you could make him reveal himself without firing a shot? What if you could turn his own aggression, his own need to kill, into the weapon that destroys him? Zaitsev looks at his assistant, Kulikov. He looks at the helmet they took off a dead German last week. He looks at a long stick of rebar jutting from the rubble, and he smiles. The next 48 hours will produce a tactic that Soviet snipers will use for the rest of the war. A tactic so effective that the Germans will write about it in after-action reports, in memoirs, in letters home. A tactic that kills without bullets, that breaks minds before bodies, that turns the hunter into the hunted with nothing more than cloth, steel, and pure psychological manipulation. The dirty trick is about to be born. And when it spreads through the Soviet sniper corps like wildfire, the German army in Stalingrad will never recover. November 10th, 1942. 6:23 a.m. Zaitsev's hidden position in the ruins of a chemical factory. He hasn't moved in 4 hours. His body is a sculpture of stillness, breathing shallow, eyes tracking, waiting. Somewhere in the rubble across the killing zone, a German sniper is doing exactly the same thing. This is the psychology of the sniper duel, and it's more brutal than any firefight. In a firefight, you react. Instinct takes over. Training kicks in. You shoot, move, communicate. Your body floods with adrenaline. Time compresses. You're too busy surviving to think about dying. In a sniper duel, you think about everything. You think about the fact that you've been staring at the same pile of bricks for 240 minutes. and your eyes are starting to play tricks on you. Was that shadow there before? Did that piece of sheet metal just shift? Or is it the wind? Is that a scope lens reflecting morning light? Or just frost on broken glass? You think about the cramp developing in your left calf. You adjust position and risk movement? Or do you endure the pain and risk losing circulation, losing reaction speed when the shot presents itself? You think about the German sniper thinking about the exact same things. This isn't combat. This is a chess match played with rifles, where the first person to move loses their life. And Zaitsev is tired of playing chess. He wants to flip the board. The idea comes from hunting. Specifically, hunting wolves. In the Urals, when wolves get smart, when they learn to avoid traps and bait, hunters use a technique called the false kill. You set up a decoy, a deer carcass, or a stuffed hide, or anything that looks like prey. The wolf investigates, gets comfortable, lets its guard down. That's when you shoot. Zaitsev realizes German snipers are wolves. Smart, cautious, deadly. They won't expose themselves for uncertain targets. They need certainty. They need to see a Soviet soldier, verify the target, confirm the kill opportunity. What if you give them that certainty? What if you give them a target so perfect, so vulnerable, so irresistible that they can't help but take the shot? And what if that target is completely empty? Zaitsev turns to Kulikov. Find me a helmet, German if possible, and something to mount it on. The decoy system was born. Here's how the basic technique works. You take a helmet, Soviet, German, doesn't matter. You mount it on a stick, pole, or piece of rebar. You position it in cover, then slowly raise it above the ridgeline as if a soldier is cautiously peeking over. The movement is critical. Too fast and it looks fake. Too slow and it doesn't draw attention. It has to mimic human caution. Hesitation. The natural behavior of a soldier who's afraid but needs to see what's ahead. You raise the helmet 6 inches. Pause. Raise it another 4 inches. Pause. Tilt it slightly as if the wearer is scanning left to right. A German sniper watching through his scope sees what his brain is trained to. See, enemy soldier, exposed, vulnerable. He fires. The helmet jerks. Maybe it falls, maybe it stays depending on the hit. Doesn't matter. What matters is that for 0.03 seconds, the duration of muzzle flash, the German sniper's position is revealed. A Soviet observer, positioned 20 or 30 meters away from the decoy, watches the enemy lines through binoculars. The instant the German fires, they mark the location. Window, 3rd floor, northeast corner, behind the broken wall with the exposed rebar. Now you know exactly where the hunter is hiding. And the hunter doesn't know you know. That's when the real sniper moves into position and waits. The German thinks he's scored a kill. He's relaxed, satisfied. Maybe already looking for his next target. His guard is down for maybe 30 seconds, maybe 2 minutes. That's your window. 1 shot. The German sniper is eliminated. And his comrades have no idea how it happened. They never saw the decoy. They only saw their expert marksman suddenly die from a shot that seemed to come from nowhere. But Zaitsev teaches something even more devious to his students. He calls it the patient decoy. You don't use the dummy once. You use it repeatedly. Same position, same movements, same pattern. You let the enemy sniper see it 3, 4, 5 times. Let him shoot at it. Let him think he's killing Soviets. He gets comfortable, predictable, careless. Then, on the 6th or 7th time, you take the dummy's position yourself. You rise up at the exact same speed, the exact same angle. The German sniper, expecting another easy kill, fires without proper verification, and you're ready. You see his muzzle flash. You already have your rifle trained on his position. He dies thinking he was shooting a dummy. Zaitsev taught students to set up decoys to fool the enemy, like dummy figures dressed in military uniform. Full-body dummies positioned in windows, half-figures behind walls, even boots sticking out from cover, as if someone's sleeping in a foxhole. The Germans waste ammunition. More importantly, they reveal positions, patterns, response times. Every shot a German fires at a decoy is intelligence gathered. Every revealed position is a Soviet sniper moving to counter it. The helmet on stick becomes the standard equipment. Every Soviet sniper team carries one. Some carry multiple decoys, different uniforms, different equipment, creating the illusion of entire squads operating where only 2 men actually hide. But the most famous use of this tactic, the one that becomes legend? The duel with Major Koenig. Now, I need to be honest with you. The story of Major Erwin Koenig is disputed. Some historians believe he never existed, that he's Soviet propaganda, a composite of multiple German snipers, or pure invention to boost morale. Other historians point to German records, to mentions in Zaitsev's memoirs, to circumstantial evidence that someone matching Koenig's description operated in Stalingrad. The truth? We may never know, for certain. But the tactical sequence Zaitsev described, whether it happened with Koenig or another German sniper, is documented Soviet doctrine. The techniques are real. The tactics were taught. So here's the story as Zaitsev told it. November 1942. A German sniper has been killing Soviet soldiers with disturbing precision. Officers, primarily. Command personnel, high-value targets. The kills suggest advanced training, superior optics, and intimate knowledge of Soviet tactics. Soviet intelligence identifies him as an SS officer, possibly from a specialized sniper school. Whether his name was actually Koenig, or whether that was a code name or Soviet invention, doesn't change the tactical reality. Someone extremely dangerous was hunting in Zaitsev's sector, and Zaitsev needed to eliminate him. For 3 days, both snipers hunt each other. Neither can get a clear shot. Koenig is disciplined, patient, and skilled. He doesn't expose himself, doesn't fall for obvious baits. This is a master at work. Zaitsev and Kulikov need a perfect trap. They choose a position overlooking a stretch of rubble between 2 destroyed buildings. Decent sight lines, multiple approach routes, the kind of ground where a sniper might position himself for a good field of fire. Kulikov takes the helmet, a Soviet SSH-40 steel helmet, and mounts it on a thin wooden plank. He positions himself in cover, holding the plank ready. Zaitsev moves to an observation position 25 meters away, rifle ready, watching the enemy lines. Early morning. The light is perfect for spotting muzzle flash, but dim enough that scope glint won't betray positions. Kulikov raises the helmet slowly, millimeter by millimeter. The way a cautious soldier peeks over a ridgeline. Nothing. He holds it. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. Still nothing. Then he tilts it slightly, mimicking the head movement of someone scanning for targets. The shot cracks across the frozen air. The helmet jerks backward, a clean hit. Center mass, where the head would be. Kulikov sees the muzzle flash. Third window from the left. Partially concealed by corrugated iron sheeting, maybe 200 meters. He signals Zaitsev. 3 fingers, left side, mid-level. Zaitsev shifts his aim. He can't see the German sniper yet. The corrugated iron provides too much concealment. He'll have to wait for Koenig to make a mistake. That's the brilliance of the decoy. It's not about the shot you take. It's about the shot your enemy takes, and what it costs him. Minutes pass. Zaitsev doesn't move. Breathing steady, finger resting beside the trigger guard, not on it. No tension, no anticipation that might cause flinch when the moment comes. Then Koenig makes his fatal error. He raises his head above the corrugated iron. Just barely. Just enough to confirm his kill. Just enough to see if the Soviet soldier is dead. Believing he'd killed his target, he allowed himself one moment of verification. One moment. Zaitsev fires. The Mosin Nagant barks. The 7.62x50 round crosses 200 meters in less than a second. Through the scope, Zaitsev watches Koenig's head snap backward. The German sniper falls behind the corrugated iron and doesn't move again. Silence settles over the rubble. Kulikov looks at Zaitsev. Zaitsev looks at Kulikov. Neither man smiles. This isn't victory. This is survival. And tomorrow, there will be another German sniper, another duel, another deadly game of patience and deception. But word spreads through the Soviet sniper corps like wildfire. Zaitsev killed the German ace, used a decoy, made the hunter reveal himself. Within days, every Soviet sniper in Stalingrad is using variations of the technique. Helmets on sticks, full dummies dressed in Soviet uniforms, mannequins positioned in windows, fake machine gun positions with wooden barrels pointed at German lines. The Germans start shooting at everything, wasting ammunition on targets that don't exist, revealing positions to kill enemies that aren't there. Soviet observers map every German response. Every muzzle flash, every firing position, every pattern of behavior. And the real Soviet snipers, the ones with actual rifles, actual bullets, actual intent to kill, move into positions the Germans have helpfully revealed. The kill rate skyrockets. German after-action reports start mentioning phantom Soviet soldiers, targets that seem to die but reappear, positions that draw fire but never fire back, an enemy that seems to multiply the more Germans you shoot. The psychological impact is devastating. Imagine being a German sniper. Your job is to hunt, to kill, to dominate the battlefield through superior skill and patience. Now you can't trust your eyes. That Soviet soldier in the window, is he real or is he stuffed cloth? That helmet peeking over the rubble, is there a head inside it? Or is it bait designed to kill you the moment you fire? Every potential target becomes a test. Every shot becomes a gamble. And if you guess wrong, you die. The decoy tactic breaks something fundamental in the German sniper corps. It breaks certainty. And without certainty, snipers can't function. By December 1942, the decoy system has spread beyond snipers. Regular Soviet infantry units are using dummies to draw German fire. Artillery observers are using them to map German positions. Entire fake positions are being constructed, empty trenches, unmanned machine gun nests, phantom strongpoints that exist only to waste German ammunition and reveal German firing positions. Zaitsev's dirty trick has evolved from a sniper tactic into a systematic deception doctrine. But here's what the Germans don't understand yet. What they won't understand until it's far too late. This isn't just about killing snipers. This is about breaking an entire army's will to fight. Because when you can't trust what you see, when every target might be a trap, when the act of defending yourself might be exactly what kills you, you stop shooting, you stop moving, you stop functioning as a fighting force. And that's when the real Soviet offensive begins. The decoy is just the beginning. The opening move in a psychological warfare campaign that will turn Stalingrad into a nightmare factory where German soldiers don't just die, they break. Next, we see what happens when deception becomes doctrine, when an entire army learns to weaponize fear itself. when the Soviets discover that the most powerful weapon in Stalingrad isn't bullets, tanks, or artillery. It's uncertain, and they're about to deploy it at a scale that will make the helmet on stick look like child's play. December 1942. The decoy tactic stops being a sniper trick and becomes Soviet military doctrine. What Zaitsev invented out of necessity, the Red Army weaponizes at industrial scale. Soviet commanders recognize something profound. You don't need to kill every German soldier. You just need to make every German soldier afraid to be a soldier. And fear, unlike bullets, is infinitely reproducible. The order comes down from 62nd Army Headquarters. All units are to integrate deception operations into standard defensive procedures, not as a specialized tactic, as basic protocol. Soviet forces begin deploying dummy machine gun positions across the entire Stalingrad front. Not just one or two decoys, dozens, hundreds. A wooden barrel wrapped in canvas, positioned in a window angled toward German lines. From 200 meters away, through smoke and dust, it looks exactly like a DP-27 light machine gun. The Germans see it, they report it. Artillery gets called in. Shells pulverize the building. Infantry advances to confirm the kill. The position is empty. Always was. The real Soviet machine gun is 50 meters away, waiting for the Germans to expose themselves during their assault on the dummy position. Mannequins dressed in Soviet uniforms appear in trenches, behind rubble walls, in windows. Some are sophisticated, articulated limbs, painted faces, authentic equipment. Others are crude, straw-stuffed greatcoats with helmets propped on top. Doesn't matter. At distance, under combat stress, they all look real enough. Soviet forces integrate mock-up artillery batteries into their defensive networks. Wooden logs painted dark green, positioned to resemble 76mm divisional guns, fake shells stacked nearby, wheel tracks carved into frozen mud leading to the position. German reconnaissance aircraft photograph them. Intelligence officers mark them on maps. Luftwaffe bombers waste ordnance destroying artillery pieces that never existed. The real Soviet guns fire from completely different positions, unmolested because German targeting maps show them somewhere they're not. Fake tank concentrations appear overnight. Plywood T-34 silhouettes positioned in staging areas. Canvas stretched over wooden frames. From 1,000 meters altitude, they're indistinguishable from actual armor. German commanders see massed Soviet tank formations and hold infantry in reserve, preparing for armored assaults that never come. Meanwhile, actual Soviet tanks attack from unexpected directions, hitting German positions stripped of reinforcements sent to counter phantom threats. Entire troop assembly areas are fabricated. Tents, campfires, radio traffic, all fake. German artillery pounds empty fields while real Soviet units move undetected through sectors the Germans believe are clear. This is maskirovka in its infancy. The Soviet art of military deception that will define their tactical doctrine for the next 50 years. But in December 1942, it's still experimental, still evolving, still learning. And it's destroying German operational effectiveness faster than any offensive could. Then the Soviets discover something even more devastating than visual deception: auditory psychological warfare. Someone in Soviet propaganda division has a brilliant, terrible idea. Weaponize sound. Loudspeakers appear across the Soviet lines, massive arrays powered by truck-mounted generators. They're positioned to project sound across no man's land, into German positions, into the ears of every soldier trying to sleep, eat, or survive. And they broadcast a message. Simple, factual, devastating. Every 7 seconds, a German soldier dies in Russia. Tick, 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 tick. Every 7 seconds, a German soldier dies in Russia. Tick, 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 tick. The ticking clock becomes the soundtrack to Stalingrad. Relentless, inescapable, precise. German soldiers try to ignore it. They stuff cloth in their ears. They sing marching songs. They talk loudly to drown it out. But in the quiet moments, and combat has many quiet moments, they hear it. Tick, 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 tick. And they start counting. They can't help it. Human brains are wired to count rhythmic patterns. 7 seconds. That's barely enough time to field strip a rifle, to eat a spoonful of soup, to write a sentence in a letter home. 7 seconds. Someone's son just died. Someone's husband. Someone's father. Someone who woke up this morning and thought he might survive today. Gone. Tick, 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 tick. Another one. The psychological impact is catastrophic because the message is essentially true. German casualties in the East are running at approximately 12 men per minute by late 1942. The math works out to roughly 1 death every 7 seconds when you average across the entire Eastern Front. The Soviets are weaponizing their enemies' losses against them. But the loudspeakers don't just broadcast statistics. At night, they play music. Specifically, they play tango. Argentine tango, the kind of sensual, melancholic music German soldiers associate with peacetime, with cafes in Berlin, with dancing with girlfriends who might be dead now from Allied bombing. The tune is always the same. A slow, mournful melody that drifts across the frozen ruins like smoke. Soviet propaganda calls it the tango of death. The lyrics are in German, perfect German, sung by someone who understands exactly what words will cut deepest. Every 7 seconds, a German soldier dies in Russia. Is it you? Your brother? Your friend? Every 7 seconds. The clock is ticking. For you. Then the music plays. Beautiful. Haunting. A reminder of everything the German soldiers have lost and will never regain. This plays throughout the winter of 1942-43. Every night, all night. Sometimes interspersed with other messages. Lists of destroyed German divisions, death tolls from recent battles, invitations to surrender with promises of hot food and warm shelter. The loudspeakers become more feared than the artillery. Because you can hide from shells. You can take cover, hunker down, wait for the barrage to end. You can't hide from sound that follows you into your foxhole, into your sleep, into your mind. The effect on German morale is documented in captured letters, in interrogations of prisoners, in after-action reports from German officers. By January 1943, German soldiers are refusing to move during daylight hours. Not because they're cowards, because movement means death. And death comes from directions they can't predict or prevent. A Gefreiter writing home to his wife in Stuttgart. We dare not stand upright anymore. Hans tried to stretch after sitting for 6 hours, and his head simply exploded. One moment he was complaining about his back, the next moment I was covered in his blood. I don't know where the shot came from. None of us saw anything. We buried him after dark. That's when we bury everyone now. The Russians own the daylight. A lieutenant's report to division headquarters. Unit combat effectiveness degraded to approximately 30%. Not from casualties, from paralysis. Men will not advance under any circumstances during daylight. Officers unable to lead because any exposed position results in immediate sniper fire. Request relief or reinforcement. Current situation is untenable. An Oberst's private diary, recovered after his death. The Russians are everywhere and nowhere. We shoot at positions that turn out to be empty. We ignore positions that turn out to be full of their soldiers. Yesterday we called artillery on what we thought was a Soviet strongpoint. 30 shells. When we advanced, we found wooden logs and mannequins. Meanwhile, real Russians flanked our position from where we thought nothing could be. Lost 47 men. I don't know how to fight this enemy. Officers unable to lead. That's the critical detail. Leadership in combat requires visibility. You can't command troops you can't see. You can't coordinate movement without exposing yourself to observe terrain, enemy positions, friendly locations. German officers who try to lead from the front die within minutes. German officers who try to lead from maps and radios lose situational awareness and make fatal tactical errors. It's a no-win scenario. And German commanders recognize it, but have no solution. Here's where the numbers become truly terrifying. Zaitsev's students alone, the snipers he personally trained in his tactics, including the decoy system, killed 6,000 Germans during the Battle of Stalingrad. 6,000 kills from approximately 28 trained snipers. That's an average of 214 kills per sniper over 4 months of fighting. But those 6,000 deaths created a cascading effect far beyond the actual casualties. Every kill paralyzes approximately 20 soldiers around it. They take cover. They stop advancing. They become combat ineffective for minutes or hours while they process what just happened and try to locate the threat. 6,000 kills times 20 soldiers paralyzed per incident equals 120,000 man-hours of combat effectiveness lost. An entire division's worth of fighting power, eliminated without firing a shot at 95% of the affected soldiers. And that's just from Zaitsev's students. The entire Soviet sniper corps in Stalingrad numbered over 1,000 trained marksmen. If we apply conservative estimates, say 50 kills per sniper over the 4-month battle, that's 50,000 German casualties directly attributable to sniper fire. 50,000 deaths creating cascading paralysis across the entire 6th Army. Entire sectors become no-go zones during daylight. German units refuse to patrol certain streets, certain buildings, certain areas where Soviet sniper activity is concentrated. The Germans start ceding ground without Soviet forces even attacking. They abandon positions that become too dangerous to hold, too lethal to supply, too psychologically destructive to defend. But here's what amplifies the horror beyond the snipers themselves. Regular Soviet infantry start adopting decoy tactics. A Soviet rifle squad defending a factory building doesn't need to be expert marksmen. They just need to be smart. They position dummy soldiers in obvious firing positions. Windows, doorways, roof access points. Germans spot them, target them, waste ammunition destroying positions that were never occupied. Meanwhile, the actual Soviet soldiers are positioned in unexpected locations. Basement windows, collapsed walls, camouflaged foxholes that don't look like defensive positions. When Germans assault the obvious positions, they expose themselves to fire from the concealed real positions. The Germans are fighting an army of ghosts, and the ghosts are winning. Real Soviet positions stay concealed while Germans waste ammunition on phantoms. A German machine gun team might fire 500 rounds at a window that contains nothing but a stuffed uniform. That's 500 rounds that won't be available when actual Soviet infantry attack. Multiply this across hundreds of defensive positions, and German units start running critically low on ammunition, fighting an enemy that doesn't exist while the real enemy waits, conserved, ready. The paranoia becomes total, all-consuming. A German soldier's letter, intercepted by Soviet intelligence. I don't trust anything I see anymore. Yesterday I shot at what I thought was a Russian. Turned out to be a coat hung on a pole. This morning I didn't shoot at what I thought was a coat on a pole. Turned out to be a Russian. He killed Werner. I don't know what's real. I don't know if I'm seeing ghosts or if the ghosts are seeing me. Another letter from a sanitator medic. The wounded keep asking me if the Russians are using magic. They see enemies that disappear. They shoot targets that don't bleed. They hear voices that come from everywhere and nowhere. I think we're all going mad. Maybe madness is better than knowing we're losing. The psychological warfare has achieved something military historians rarely see. It's broken the enemy's ability to distinguish reality from deception. And once that breaks, everything else follows. Unit cohesion dissolves. Soldiers stop trusting their perception. Officers stop trusting their soldiers' reports. Intelligence becomes useless because nobody knows what's real. The German Sixth Army is collapsing from the inside. Not from bullets, from uncertainty. December 1942 became January 1943. The Soviet winter offensive begins. Operation Uranus, Operation Little Saturn. The encirclement of Stalingrad completes. But the Germans might have held. They had defensive positions. They had fortifications. They had armor and artillery and veteran troops who'd conquered half of Europe. What they didn't have was morale. What they didn't have was the psychological capacity to fight an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't predict, couldn't understand. The decoy tactics, the sniper warfare, the psychological operations, they'd done their job. They'd broken the German army's will before the Soviet tanks even arrived. And then came the directive that would weaponize deception on a scale never seen before. January 1943. Soviet High Command issues a new protocol, not just for Stalingrad, for the entire Eastern Front, maskirovka, the formal doctrine of military deception. Every Soviet unit, from platoon to army level, is to implement systematic deception operations. Every operation is to include false objectives. Every position is to include dummy elements. Every movement is to be concealed by false movements elsewhere. The helmet on stick, the dummy soldier, the fake artillery position, these were just proof of concept. Now the Soviets are scaling it up to industrial warfare. And the Germans, already paralyzed by fear and uncertainty in Stalingrad, are about to face the same psychological assault across 200 miles of front line. The dirty trick is about to become standard operating procedure, and nothing in German military doctrine, nothing in their training, nothing in their experience has prepared them for what comes next. January 1943. The doctrine gets a name. Maskirovka. The 1944 Soviet Military Encyclopedia would define it as the complexity of measures directed to mislead the enemy regarding the presence and disposition of forces, various military objectives, their condition, combat readiness and operations, and likewise the plans of the command. Read that definition again. It's not just about hiding, it's about actively misleading, creating false realities, making the enemy commit resources, attention, and lives to threats that don't exist, while real threats move undetected. Deceptive measures included concealment, hiding what is real, imitation with decoys and dummies, showing what is false, demonstrative maneuvers to deceive, performing actions designed solely to misdirect enemy attention. 3 principles: simple in theory, devastating in practice. What started with Zaitsev's helmet on a stick has evolved into systematic doctrine applicable at every level of warfare. Squad tactics to strategic operations. Sniper hides to army movements. The Soviets have weaponized deception itself. And in Stalingrad, they're about to prove how completely it can destroy an enemy. January 26, 1943. Soviet forces complete the encirclement. The German Sixth Army is surrounded. 250,000 soldiers trapped in a pocket approximately 20 miles across. Tactically, they could still fight. They have ammunition. They have defensive positions. They have veteran troops who've survived 4 months of the most brutal urban warfare in history. But they don't have morale. The demoralization is complete, total, absolute. German soldiers are surrendering rather than face another day of invisible death. Not because they're hungry, though they are. Not because they're cold, though temperatures hit -30. Not because they're outnumbered, though they are. They're surrendering because they've been psychologically broken. Soviet loudspeakers continue broadcasting. But the message has changed. No more ticking clocks. No more tango of death. Now they broadcast appeals to family, home, and personal security. German soldiers, you are surrounded. Your commanders have abandoned you. Your Führer has forgotten you. But your families have not. Your wives wait for you. Your children need you. Your mothers pray for you. Surrender, and you will see them again. Fight, and you will die here, nameless, in the frozen ruins of a city that means nothing to you. These appeals prove most effective. Not threats, not mockery. Just simple reminders of what the German soldiers have to lose. A man can endure starvation if he believes his sacrifice matters. He can endure cold if he believes victory is possible. He can endure fear if he believes his comrades stand with him. But when uncertainty has destroyed your perception of reality, when you can't distinguish real threats from phantom ones, when every action might be exactly what kills you, the idea of going home, even as a prisoner, becomes more attractive than one more day of psychological torture. February 2nd, 1943. Field Marshal Friedrich Paulus surrenders the German 6th Army. 91,000 German soldiers march into captivity. 91,000 survivors out of the 250,000 who were encircled. Out of the 500,000 who entered Stalingrad in August. The photographs show men who look like walking corpses. Hollow eyes, frost-bitten faces, uniforms that hang on skeletal frames. But if you look closely at those photographs, you see something else in their expressions. Relief. The invisible war is over. The psychological torture has ended. They can finally stop scanning every window, every pile of rubble, every shadow for the sniper who might kill them. Captivity, starvation, the brutal Soviet POW camps they're about to enter. All of that seems preferable to one more day in Stalingrad. That's how completely the Soviet psychological warfare campaign succeeded. February 22nd, 1943. Vasily Zaitsev is awarded Hero of the Soviet Union, the WWII, highest honor the nation can bestow. The citation doesn't just mention his kill count, though 225 confirmed kills is remarkable enough. It mentions his role as instructor, his development of tactics, his contribution to the systematic destruction of German morale. Zaitsev trained snipers who killed 6,000 Germans, but more importantly, he taught a doctrine that paralyzed tens of thousands more. The award ceremony is brief. Zaitsev is still recovering from wounds. In January 1943, a German mortar round exploded near his position. Shrapnel tore through his eyes. For weeks, the doctors thought he'd be permanently blinded. But Soviet ophthalmologist Vladimir Filatov, one of the pioneers of corneal transplantation, managed to restore Zaitsev's sight through a series of delicate surgeries. Zaitsev would never return to frontline sniping. His eyes couldn't handle the precision work anymore. Instead, he became what he was always meant to be, a teacher. For the rest of the war, Zaitsev trained the next generation of Soviet snipers, passed on his tactics, refined his doctrine, helped create the systematic sniper warfare program that would define Soviet military practice for decades. The dirty tricks spread through the Red Army like a virus. Every sniper school taught it, every manual documented it, every unit deployed it. By 1944, German intelligence reports were filled with frustrated descriptions of phantom Soviet positions and impossible-to-verify enemy strength, and systematic deception at all levels. The Germans never adapted. They kept trying to fight with doctrine that assumed enemy honesty, that the enemy position you see is the actual enemy position, that the threat you identify is the real threat. The Soviets had abandoned that assumption entirely. Fast forward 80 years, Eastern Ukraine, another war, another generation of soldiers. Ukrainian forces are using mannequin decoys against Russian invaders. Same principle, same tactic. Dummy soldiers positioned to draw fire from Russian positions, revealing those positions to Ukrainian artillery. Russian troops in intercepted communications complain about ghost soldiers and impossible-to-verify targets. History repeating, the lesson unlearned. Because the principle hasn't changed since Zaitsev first raised that helmet on a stick in November 1942. The perception of threat is as powerful as actual threat, maybe more powerful. Because actual threats can be confronted, engaged, destroyed. Perceived threats exist in your mind, and once uncertainty enters your mind, it multiplies, spreads, consumes your ability to function. You stop trusting what you see. You question every decision. You hesitate when action is required. And in combat, hesitation kills. The dirty trick, that simple, brilliant, devastating tactic, proved that you don't need superior technology to defeat a superior enemy. You just need to make them defeat themselves. So what made this dirty trick so effective? Not the technology. A helmet, a stick, some cloth stuffed into a coat. Materials worth maybe 5 rubles. Equipment a child could assemble. The Germans had superior optics. Zeiss scopes that outclassed Soviet equivalents. Superior rifles. The Kar 98K was more accurate than the Mosin Nagant at range. Superior training doctrine. German sniper schools were older, more established, more sophisticated. None of it mattered. Because the weapon wasn't the decoy itself. The weapon was the uncertainty the decoy created. The psychology is elegant and brutal. Uncertainty breeds paralysis. When you're certain of a threat, you can respond. Engage it, evade it, counter it. You have options. You can act. When you're uncertain, when that Soviet soldier in the window might be real or might be stuffed cloth, when firing might kill an enemy or might reveal your position to the real enemy waiting for exactly that response, you freeze. Heightened anxiety leads to decreased operational efficiency. Combat. Effectiveness plummets not from casualties, but from cognitive overload. German soldiers spent more mental energy trying to determine what was real than actually fighting. That's exhausting, unsustainable. Eventually, something breaks. Continuous threats bred suspicion at levels that destroyed unit cohesion. Soldiers questioned their environment. Then they questioned their comrades' judgment. Then they questioned their officers' competence. An army that doesn't trust itself cannot function. Why couldn't the Germans adapt? Doctrinal rigidity versus Soviet improvisation. The German military was built on Prussian traditions, detailed planning, systematic execution, established procedures for every scenario. But there was no procedure for the enemy position might be entirely fake, and your attempt to verify it might be exactly what kills you. A captured German officer's interrogation, February 1943. We underestimated our opponent. We had to adjust our tactics constantly, but by then the CDL flower of our shock troops was already lost. The flower of shock troops, the veterans, the experienced soldiers who might have adapted, who might have developed counter-tactics. They died first, killed by snipers, killed by their own aggressive doctrine that assumed enemies would fight honestly. The replacements that followed were already demoralized by stories from survivors, already afraid, already broken before they even reached Stalingrad. Vasily Zaitsev survived the war, settled in Kiev, became director of a textile factory. He lived quietly, raised a family. Rarely spoke about Stalingrad unless pressed. In interviews late in life, he emphasized teamwork, the coordination, the fact that none of his tactics worked alone. They required spotters, support, communication, trust. "I didn't win duels," he said in 1972. "My team won battles." December 15, 1991. Vasily Grigorievich Zaitsev dies in Kiev. He's 76 years old. He's buried in Kiev initially. But that wasn't where he wanted to rest. January 31st, 2006. 15 years after his death, Zaitsev's remains are reburied at Mamayev Kurgan, Mamayev Hill, the centerpiece of Stalingrad's defenses, the site of the most brutal fighting in human history. He rests now among the soldiers he fought beside, under the shadow of the Motherland Calls statue, the towering monument to Soviet sacrifice. It's fitting. The man who proved that cleverness beats technology, that psychology beats firepower, that one good idea can change the course of history. He rests where his idea mattered most. The enduring lesson of Zaitsev's dirty trick isn't about sniping. It's about innovation over resources. The Soviet Union was outgunned, outmaneuvered, nearly destroyed in 1941. They didn't win through superior equipment. They won through superior adaptation. They took what they had, cloth, wood, imagination, and turned it into weapons the Germans couldn't counter. Psychological warfare's power lies not in its lethality, but in its efficiency. One decoy costing 5 rubles can eliminate a sniper worth years of training. One tactic developed in desperation can paralyze an entire army. One clever trick can change history's course. Because sometimes the deadliest weapon isn't the one that fires. Sometimes it's the one that makes the enemy too afraid to fire back. Sometimes it's the one that exists only in the enemy's mind. And sometimes the greatest victory isn't killing your enemy, it's making them defeat themselves. What World War II innovation fascinates you most? The technology that changed warfare? The tactics that nobody expected? The moments when cleverness defeated power? Tell me in the comments below. I read every single one. And if this story captured you, if you felt the tension, the fear, the brilliant brutality of psychological warfare, hit that like button. Share this with someone who loves military history. Subscribe because next time we're covering something even more audacious. Next time, the Norwegian commandos who destroyed Hitler's atomic bomb. February 1943. A team of ski troops, a frozen fortress in occupied Norway, a heavy water plant that could give Nazi Germany nuclear weapons, and one mission that had to succeed, because failure meant the end of the world. That story's coming soon. Don't miss it. Until then, remember Zaitsev's lesson. The best weapon is the one your enemy never sees coming, even if that weapon is nothing more than a helmet on a stick.